Hello and welcome to Soundtrack of Your Life. I know it's been a while, so I hope you're okay. If you're not familiar with the show, then this is the place where you get to share stories about music, i.e. songs, bands, albums, soundtracks, theme tunes, whatever you'd like, and how they've interspersed with moments, people, events, scenarios, times in your life, because we've all got stories to tell when it comes to that, so this is the place to share them. So my guest on this week's show is the really inspiring Allison Creighton, and she's someone who helps people publish their stories and essentially publish their books that they've got in their mind and essentially get their story out there into the wider world. In the hour of chat, we cover a lot of great songs, a lot of poignant moments in Allison's life, and it makes for a great listen, so I hope you enjoy the show. And if you want to be on the show, just follow the link in the description or place wherever you're watching this to come along and share your stories on the show as well. So without further ado, enjoy the show and feel supersonic. Hello and welcome to Soundtrack of Your Life. I know it's been a while, but hey, things have been going on, but we're all good. We're back now with a very special guest on the show. If you're new to the show, this is the place where you get to share your stories behind how music, so whether that's songs, bands, albums, soundtracks, theme tunes, whatever you'd like, have interspersed with moments, people, events, scenarios, times in your life, because we've all got stories to share in that regard, so this is the place where you can share them. So my guest on this week's show is Allison Creighton, and Allison is someone who helps people publish and write their own books. And to be honest, we've all probably got this novel or bit of a book in our drawer somewhere, so Allison is the person that can help bring it out the drawer and into the publishing world. So Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard.
So, to be honest, people that have seen the show before, or even if you're new, this goes where it wants to. This is not really a typical interview style format. This goes where people want to in terms of relating their stories, relating their skills, their profession, whatever they would like. So, Alison, to be honest, you start where you'd like to with your favourite song, most poignant song, most memorable song, band. The floor is yours.
Okay, I just want to go back to what you said about stories.
Yep.
And it's so fitting because that's what I do. I help people tell their stories. I help them write and publish their books because I think that's so important because there's so much power there.
Yes.
I love what you do because there's a lot of power in music. Like most people, music has gotten me through some very difficult times. A lot of good times, a lot of bad times, a lot of pain, a lot of grief, oppression, just different things that we all experience in life. And
Yes.
And I always make a habit of saying, but God, because God works it all out, even though we don't see it while we're in the midst of it. He still works it out and brings good from it. The Negro Gospels or the Negro spirituals were like the foundation for my life.
Right.
That's what I heard most as a child growing up at home, as far back as I can remember. Those songs played a significant role in my life. I grew up in the Deep South, in Alabama. And in our area, it's considered the Black Belt. The soil is very rich here, but the people are very poor. That's just the way it's been. So I think that's probably another reason the Negro spirituals were the main foundational music in my life as a little girl. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
you're right to point out the region that you grew up in. People are going to sing about what's going on in their life, right? And if it's tough economic times, etc., there's real spirit when they come together and almost sort of share that burden together through song, because it's one of the things that can be either uplifting or invokes that togetherness. So it's really evocative when you paint that picture.
Yeah. And when you said that you took me back to when I was a little girl, growing up in church as far back as I can remember, like you say, those songs will help draw us together. And I remember my dad. He's singing what we called it a quartet, even though the correct word was probably quartet.
Right.
We kind of had a way of messing words up quite a bit. That was just normal.
As long as
We
people get it, that's what matters.
Yes, but they would sing a lot, and I remember being up at nighttime. When they would be doing their practicing and stuff.
Hmm.
And my dad had a really, really deep bass voice. I have not heard anybody else's that sound like him. My brothers talk about how they would be singing with him, and they could not get as low as he could with his
Wow.
voice. And it was really rare. We didn't think so at that time because we just grew up around it. We
Yeah, it's
heard
just
it.
the norm for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another thing I remember as a little girl was the catechism. Catholics are probably familiar with it
Right.
because I grew up in an AME church, which is African Methodist Episcopal Church, and we had the catechism, and we just memorized it. I mean, every Sunday, it was this little thin booklet that we would go through, and we had the catechism until I was probably a teenager. We started as early as we could start reading, and really even before we started reading, because our Sunday school teacher, he was a veteran. I remember that, and he just drilled that thing into us. And I remember some of the first things we learned was, "Who made you?" And we knew that was
Mm.
God. Where is
Mm.
God? God is everywhere. And we just that was drilled into us every week. And looking back now, though, as a grown up, I've gotten to the point where I say, well, if we really took that to heart and we really
Mm.
believed that God was everywhere and He saw everything, then it would make us live differently.
Yes.
It's kind of like we were reciting the words, but it wasn't really sinking deep into our hearts like it should have been.
Do you think then that if they were interpreted literally to heart, how different that would have looked in terms of growing up then?
Because some of our decisions would be different,
Mm.
because
Mm.
living lives of duplicity,
Yeah.
that wouldn't really be happening because you would be more God conscious,
Yeah.
knowing that
Yeah.
He
Yeah. Yeah.
He is seeing and hearing even when nobody else is. And
Mm.
as an older adult, that's really become more of who I am. But it's had to evolve over time. And music played a big role in that. Another thing I remember from childhood was the big meeting. That was a time we looked forward to every year. Somewhere along the line, it kind of morphed into homecoming. I guess we got more sophisticated,
Right. Right.
and we kind of veered away from calling it the big meeting and started referring to it as homecoming. But the basic premise of it remained the same. We gathered together and cooked this food. We were very poor. Everybody in that area was, but we somehow managed to save and bring all the food together and pack up all these big boxes of food and take it to church and share it. If it was nice outside, we gather on the church grounds and had these tables built out there. We eat outside, but if it rained, we just stay inside, flip those pews around facing each other, and set up there. It had stations. It was really good.
Wow. So very communal
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's what it was like. And I remember my mom. She had this special, really moist cake that she would make, had red swirls in it. And the preacher always said, whenever he saw that, he knew it was hers. He just had to have some of her cake. And that was just something, though. And with us being in the deep South, you already know we had to have fried chicken and macaroni and cheese and all of that good old stuff. But it was nice. It was a good time. Tough times, but good times. And I'm thinking that it's just a typical potluck that people call it today, but I hadn't heard that term until I was a grown up.
Brilliant.
you
Lovely
know.
memories.
hmm Another memory I have where the singing really played a part was what we call the testimony service. And that was the first song that I put on the list that I sent to you was "I Feel the Fire Burning." I remember that one. The little old ladies in church would start singing it. I guess now I would be considered one of those little old ladies. But anyway, I remember the little old lady singing that one. I feel the fire burning. There was another one that was real popular with him. You can't make me doubt him. I know too much about him. I remember that one. One of the main ones that we considered a devotional song was "A Charge to Keep I Have." It was written by John Wesley, I think, but it took on a different meaning as a Negro spiritual because
Ah.
so many couldn't read. So you had somebody who would sing part of the song and then they just repeat it back.
Oh wow! So learning through singing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I
Wow.
remember that. Um, and but the main emphasis of that song was a charge to keep I have, a God to glorify. And it's like the calling that we have to glorify God. That's what it was about. And Jesus loves me. That was a popular children's song. Even though we thought it was yes, Jesus loves me. But anyway, same song that meant a lot to a lot of us growing up. Yeah. But I'll pause for a second because it might be something you want to ask or something you want to say or add, whatever.
No, to be honest, I say when the guests share all these kind of stories and times from their life, I'm like, I just love to absorb it. Like as I said, like
Mm-hmm.
the ethos of the show is about sharing stories because we all love stories.
Mm-hmm.
People think that it's just confined to kids at bedtime or from our childhood. But if
Mm-hmm.
you think about us as adults today, when we watch a film or TV, what we're watching a story. Even in
Mm-hmm.
music, there's so many stories. So
Right down the
hearing all
story.
your moments about certain songs and communal moments and people having real kind of affirming moments,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be on the end of that. And that's when I say, when I turn the mic around, I just keep feeling free to share because for me, it's like if there's something I'd like to ask or chip in, I will do so.
Mm-hmm.
But hearing all your moments and memories, I'm like, that evokes me thoughts of you could have a tougher week as you could have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Earning a wage or going to school or wherever it might have been. But then there was that moment you look forward to on a
Mm-hmm.
Sunday when you
Yep.
would all gather together
Mm-hmm.
and share whatever's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's religious teachings or stories or affirming that kind of thing. So I'm not surprised that there are a couple of links to some songs from back in that time of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's amazing though. Like you said, the way that music just kind of it's just always in the background,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And you never really stop to think about it, but it was just connecting us. It was helping make those memories and helping stuff stick. Because
Yep.
like each period of my life, there were just different songs that made a difference.
Mm,
I know
mm.
as a preteen and teen, one of the important things for me during that period was getting away from there. My sister had gone off to the Air Force when I was like 5 years old, and my
Okay.
little sister was just born. Years later, she talked about how she and my sister were strangers, because there are 18 years difference between them,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and they didn't grow up together. And but we used to go visit her during the summer. Wherever she was stationed, she just bring us to visit her. And they were. I remember our oldest brother. He passed away shortly after she had left home.
Okay.
She moved away, Mobile, and then to New York. And then during that particular time frame, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I know I was like 6 or 7 was when my brother passed. He and my uncle were headed home from work, and the truck they were in, it was an old pulpwood truck, because down in that area, logging and pulpwood were, that was the big thing.
Yeah.
And they were headed home. The brakes blew out on the truck. They coming down the hill, and the train was across the track, but they didn't stop.
Oh no.
And there were two other guys, three, because there were five of them in the truck, and two of them between my brother and my uncle. And those guys were jumping, and they said my brother was on the, I think they call it a running board. He had stepped there ready to jump, and then
Right.
my uncle asked him, "Don't let me die by myself." And my brother didn't jump, and he and my uncle both got killed together.
Oh.
And But I remember that period, and I remember hearing about that. I remember their double funeral, because they were buried the same day. But there is nothing else I remember about my brother. Maybe one memory about my uncle, one about my brother, and everything else is just blank. And I thought, well, maybe over the years something would come back, but really nothing else. And I know I was old enough to remember them, but I guess that was just so traumatic. I just lost it. But and even in all of that, I know for how the people came together and they rallied around my parents. Like I said, music has gotten us through a lot of pain, a lot of grief, all of that, but good times as well. Um, from there, as a preteen, I was part of the junior choir, and before
Okay.
long, my cousin and I, she and I were, I mean, like two peas in a pod, and we call ourselves sister cousins. We were first cousins, but we were more like sisters. I mean, everywhere you saw one of us, you saw the other one. So we ended up pretty much in charge of the junior choir. And I remember Rashad, we were taking them to practice one day,
Mm.
and I was driving my brother's little beat up Volkswagen. I don't remember if it was a Beetle or a Bug, so we just call it the Bee. But anyway, we were driving the Bee to take them to practice. We had like 13 of us packed into that little Volkswagen.
Sounds familiar.
You just do what you have to do. And we had this thing where we wanted them dressed alike when, they were up there representing the choir. So we wanted them to wear a white top, black bottom. But the
Right.
boys, we had them get navy pants. And the girls, we got on my mom's sewing machine and made them little skirts. Some of them were falling
Okay.
apart, but we made them.
That fair play, man, to create it for the whole choir.
Yeah, yeah, and there were a bunch of them, but we just had to do what we had to do. And I remember that little beat up bug, the bee, bug, beetle, whichever one it was. That's how I learned to drive a manual transmission. And one of my biggest fears was rolling back down some of those steep hills that we'd be
Oh
going
god,
up.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hill starts. Forget it.
Yeah,
It's not happening.
but you just kind of do what you have to do.
So it sounds like the choir then was like the natural outlet for you. If
Mm-hmm.
coming from a family that had a rich, um, you know, voice in it with your dad, and then growing up around the time of being in church, etc. So it felt like the choir was then the next natural step for you.
It was, but I was not a great singer. My
Right.
little sister, she could sing like Whitney Houston. My brothers were really good singers, but my older sister and I, and one more brother. There were 14 of us total. I never even told you that.
Right, right.
11 boys and 3 girls. But there was one of my brothers, my older sister and I. We had reading parts on the programs. The others had singing parts. We got reading parts because we were not good at singing.
It all counts.
Pardon me.
It all counts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but it was good though. I remember some of the songs from that time. I have decided to follow Jesus, and Sailor did a version of that, and I put the link in the playlist for that one because it was really good. Um, it- a couple of them grew up in Africa, and
Mm.
you could hear the African rhythm with it. It was real good. Soon and Very Soon by Andre Crouch. That was one that was popular during our latter junior choir years.
Mm.
Let's see, there was another one. Oh yeah, Everlasting Life. I remember that one. Everlasting Life and Jesus Be a Fence All Around Me. Those were some that they were introduced to us. So we ended up learning those songs. There was a song I remember, Lord Help Me to Hold Out. That one was popular during that period also. And like you said, the environment you grow up in, the struggles and stuff, kind of have a big impact on the kind of music that means
Mm.
something to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you find that when you attach onto a certain song or genre or whatever, it carries you through.
Mm-hmm.
Even into your adulthood, you might,
Mm-hmm.
tastes might vary and change, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you'll always go back to where it first started, where it got stronger for you.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that said, then did you experience any sense of changing tastes, etc.? Because it sounds at the moment it's a very gospel, religious based uh, taste. Did that evolve at
Um,
all?
well, see, we grew up in an area where the radio station played country western.
Yes.
And then I would get on the radio and I would play a lot of classical music. So really, I just always liked pretty much any kind of music.
Right.
I remember when rap first came in the 70s, we first heard it. And we said,
Yeah.
oh, that stuff won't last. Rap has
Wow.
lasted a long time.
Yeah. Still going 50 years on.
Yeah. And it was just so different. We just didn't expect it to last. But, I remember in the 80s, 81, that's when my husband's dad got killed. He was helping somebody change a tire on the side of the road. A person came through, ran over him, didn't see him, ran over him. And the song that stuck at that time was Jesus is Love by the Commodores. Lionel
Right.
Richie did it. And that was sung. They ended up playing it. I remember the guy who did the Sunday morning program the day after his dad's funeral played that song, and it just stuck. Jesus is love. And then shortly after that, I ended up going off to the Air Force. Wasn't a whole lot of gospel music. Wasn't even a whole lot of thinking about God during that period. It was just
Was
kind of.
was that a conscious choice for you to join the Air Force?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, because my sister had
okay,
gone when I was in second grade, and I knew I
right.
wanted to do that.
And this was to be a pilot or an
Mm-mm.
engineer or?
Just getting in the Air Force to get out of that
Oh,
poverty,
right, right. Wow.
the
Okay,
poverty that we've grown up in.
I see.
Because we had three of our brothers went to the Army, but the military was a way out for most of us.
Wow. Okay.
If you wanted to get out of there and get out of poverty, military was it for a lot of us. I didn't have any intention of going back home when I left. Um, I just wanted to get away from there. And because it was really oppressive and very depressing when I go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
because you just saw the poverty and there was very little you could do about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, but during that particular period, didn't really think about God a lot. But the thing is, He was still working in me. That foundation couldn't be taken away. And I remember one of the songs during that time was God Is. And
Okay.
I was introduced to that song. It was Reverend James Cleveland. And it was during the time my husband and I were still dating. This was before we got married. And, but you just talk about God is. And I think that kind of reminded me of how I had been brought up. So going into marriage, as a young, see, I was 20. Yeah, we got married the day after I turned 20. Yeah. I My 20th birthday one day, I got married the next, and we had planned the wedding. We planned it on that day. And then that same year, we had our son, our first child. And so, as a young mom, young married, raising my children, we had three from 84 to 89. We quickly had our three, and that was our contribution. My
Yep.
first two came in July. And I remember a few people made the comment to me because my mom had six boys in July.
Wow.
Yeah. So when they saw my first two come in July, they said, "Oh, you're going to be the one who had a big family." I said, "No, I don't want a big family." Growing up, it was so hard. I was always trying to figure out who we could have done without.
Come on, that's like a third of the month is solely birthdays. Like like 9 to 10 people have got their birthday in July. That's a hell of a month.
Yeah. Yep. Had six of them in July. And my
Wow.
first two came and said, "Nope, not going to be me." And Then our third one was born in November. And my husband made a joke. She could look at her birthday and tell she was not playing. But she was a determining factor. We knew we didn't want any more after that.
We're done now.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we made our contribution. That was enough. But we ended up homeschooling them, and I remember we played a lot of songs.
Wow.
Maranatha Praise, Integrity Music. I remember Twyla Paris was really important to us during that period. Lamb of God was one of her songs. When my first two had come along, I remember being introduced to the song I'm Yours, Lord. Everything I am, everything I got, everything I'm not. I remember that song because it really made an impact on me. A kind of humorous thing was when our second child she's the one just had an emergency C-section, had her second preemie, but they're good, so thank God for that. But I remember when she was a little girl, must have been around 3 because it was right after we had baby number 3. I don't know how familiar you are with a cappella singing, but
a little bit, but
during that period, that's when we were really introduced to serious a cappella singing. And the song leaders doing all of this and stuff, just helping keep you on beat and keep you in time. But she was sitting there. We didn't even know she was paying attention to it, but we looked over, and he's singing the song, Burdens Are Lifted at Calvary, and she just going right along with me like a 3-year-old.
That's brilliant. Well, they do say, kids mimic things at that age so easily, and, that's where I feel a lot of our signs, tastes, and all that develop, because you naturally just absorb everything going around you. So if your folks are playing a certain kind of music, then you'll absorb that and try and reflect it back. You copy them.
Yeah.
So to see a little 3-year-old doing that kind of thing in the background.
Yeah. She was just sitting there working away, and we hadn't even noticed it,
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But during that time, I remember one of the important songs was He's Still Working on Me, because we were trying to help them understand how God is still always working on them. No matter how old we get, we're still a work in progress. It took him just a week to make the moon and the stars, the sun and the earth, and Jupiter and Mars. So loving and patient he must be, because he's still working on me. And I still sing that one with my grandchildren today.
Nice. Teaching the virtue of patience.
And there was another one, Change My Heart, Oh God. That one was really important to me. And then as the children got older, just kind of reminding them of that, for God to change our hearts to help mold and make us into who it is he wants us to be. Okay. And that
so it sounds like you're very, very deep into the lyrics of these songs, and the messages they contain.
Yeah, words always meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one reason God called me to do this thing, editing and helping people publish books.
Yeah.
I don't know, but words just always meant a lot. And I was talking with some ladies probably about 15, 20 years ago, and I told them I don't understand why it took me getting to 40 to figure out I'm supposed to be doing something with books, because I always loved books. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, you better you realise that sooner rather than later. There may be some going, what is I want to be doing? But they're down another line already, and they feel that that's it. I can't change. Well, it is possible. These realizations, these moments, they're always accessible to us. It's whether we want to go and access them, because they sound grandiose, changing lifestyle moments where you're down one line and suddenly you're veering towards something you think you'll enjoy or being called to, but then there's so much like, is that the right move? Do I really want to do this? This kind of thing. But as I said, the reason I picked up on lyrics is that you're mentioning a lot of song titles that became kind of like life lessons, and you still recall them today. So you're someone comfortable, familiar with lyrics, and it's like, all right, this is someone that helps people write books and publishing. It's like, that's Very
The
much is
connection.
obviously. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, it is something of how we missed. I mean, really obvious stuff once you look back on it. But like I said earlier, in the midst of it, we just miss it. I know during the time after that, as our children got older and into
Mm,
teenage, that was a very difficult time. And music, it was really, really important because it was a very, very difficult time and place. Um,
right,
my husband developed a serious gambling addiction. He had been a
right,
very successful state trooper, Alabama state trooper, developed a gambling addiction. I mean, completely blindsided all of us because he was
right.
always so regimented and disciplined and stuff. And that one just, I mean, just knocked our feet from under us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we end up with a lot of legal and financial battles as a result of that. I made a lot of promises I didn't deliver on, contracts I didn't fulfill, and letting people down who trusted me. That was very difficult because my parents
Mm,
had raised us: you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal.
yeah,
And
yeah.
being charged with theft by deception or theft of property, that was a real serious blow. We
Right,
ended up going through
right,
homelessness. My first grandchild was a preemie, was fighting for her life during all of this stuff that was going on, having to be away from my children. My husband and me both dealing with prison time. I mean, just a lot of stuff going on. But during that time, God gave me a poem, God is always faithful. And one of my brothers said it to music. And he, another brother, our little sister, and my dad ended up singing that song together. Yep, God is always faithful, no matter what we do, no matter how much we disappoint Him. He remains faithful. He's faithful even when we're not.
So when you had that moment together, how did it feel to you? And amongst all these problems and challenges and all this going on, how did
Um,
that moment feel, if you remember?
it filled me with hope again because during that time I really had lost hope.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I remember in prison singing the song "Sanctuary." Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. And when you're singing that, tried and true, you don't think about what you're really asking God to do.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
asking Him to try you, just like gold has to be tried in the fire. And I felt like we had been tried in the fire and are still rebounding from it, over 20 years later. And, and some of the people we just never be able to repay them. Some of them been so patient, just giving us the time and space to get all this stuff worked out. And I've reminded people, we've done freedom groups. Our church does freedom groups, and I've either led, co-led, or hosted like a dozen of them. And I have
Hmm.
a thing on my wall in the living room. I didn't realize it was that many until I started putting them together. One of the girls and her boys had bought me a picture frame with like a dozen rectangles in it. And what I did was made lists of our different freedom groups and put them in there. And that's when it hit me how many we had done. And because freedom is so important. I remember during the prison time, like Sanctuary was one of the main songs, but there was another one by I think that was William Murphy Jr. It was Changes, and it's talking about going through changes, and it's like God was preparing us, you know, all of this stuff. There was another song, Mary Mary came out with Shackles. Take these shackles off my feet, cause I want to praise you. And
Wow.
yeah, that song meant a lot. And it's like it was getting us prepared for this rebuilding and restoration period. Because coming out of that, that's when my husband came out with the in prison was where he, God had helped him see he needed to write a book. And so that's what got us on the book journey because we couldn't afford to pay somebody to do that for us, you
Mm.
know. So he just took his stuff, dropped it on my lap. It was all these little squares of notes where he had saved paper in prison, tore that paper, and just wrote and wrote and wrote. And he dropped it on my lap
Wow.
and said, "You can put this thing together." So that's what pushed us to learn about, writing a book. My daughter had taught herself photography. She did the cover design, and I did the editing on the
Wow.
inside. And
So it was a real collective effort then.
mm-hmm, yep, and that was another thing that helped pull us together. Um, the his book is "Don't Get Sidetracked," and what he was
Right.
doing was trying to help teach our young people,
Mm.
just be real careful about your choices and decisions, understand their consequences, and just don't get sidetracked. Because it's so easy to do. Um, And in that particular period, that rebuilding and restoring period, holiness was one of the songs that I remember. Holiness, that's what God is calling us to. And that's what we long for, and that's what I want to be. And it talks about holiness, righteousness, and faithfulness.
Mm. Where did you come across these songs? Like, did you were they just on the radio that you tuned into, or other people
Um,
told you about them? Because it sounds like that you're getting these songs at very timely moments,
yeah, and that's the thing
and
about it, Rashad, that it's a lot of them we got in church. And it's like God was just supplying them for that particular season. And
right?
and since you asked me, I'm gonna tell you this also. You're familiar with the Prayer of Jabez book, right?
No,
Okay, it was a little book. That thing sold, I think it was like 8 million copies the first year. And it's just from this short little prayer that's tucked in
right.
the genealogy in the Bible. And it's where he was praying, Lord, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory. Well, I started praying that prayer. And I joke with people, I said, I didn't know enlarging my territory would include a trip to prison. But God knows what he's doing, because years later, when I got out and got cleared to go back on prison ministry, we went for years. And when I could talk with those ladies and let them know, I know what it feels like to be sitting right here where you're sitting. You're sitting here wondering what's going on with your children at home, who's
Mm.
taking care of them, what are they going through. I know
Yeah,
what
how
that
they're
feels
growing
like.
up, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
When you know what something feels like, you can really empathize, not just sympathize, but you can really feel what they're feeling. I think it makes a difference.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. I love
And
that. That it almost seems like it taps into your natural spirituality and faith. That
mm-hmm,
when you've needed these moments and realizations, it's come along in the form of a song.
mm-hmm,
To then go into this career path after this difficult time to go. Do you know what? We need
mm-hmm,
to write a book about our experience, and
mm-hmm.
then it's led you on to this career choice.
Yep. And I
Wow.
got two books that I haven't published yet because I've been so busy helping other people publish theirs. But one of them is false starts, fumbles, and bad calls. They don't just
Mm.
happen in football.
Hmm.
Just kind of reminding people that we're all going to make some false starts. We're going to fumble, whether that's fumbling relationships, fumbling careers, fumbling with our finances, whatever it might be. We're going to fumble, and we're going to make some bad calls.
That's a great byword and lesson,
Mm-hmm.
because you're right. There's a temptation to feel that um, everything should be correct and perfect all the time, but that's not realistic. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen. It happens briefly on screen in
Mm-hmm.
films and TV, and looks idealistic and stuff, but we're human beings. We're not
Mm-hmm.
robots, and finding even robots make mistakes, but that's another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Point being is that rather than look for an idyllic lifestyle where nothing ever goes wrong, which is not realistic,
Mm-mm. No.
we can embrace the idea that we will make mistakes, and that very sentence gives yourself a little bit of breathing space. I
Mm-hmm.
call it, on your self-worth scale, it just raises it slightly, because look, it's not a free pass to go, right, just trample on everything and everyone
Right.
without a care. It's like, no, it's to recognize that, when in my perspective in my work, we talk about things like cognitive bias or beliefs that we can't do something, so we stem away from it. Things like perfectionism and
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing. It's the idea that, right, if I'm going to enact in a behavior or take part in something, it has to be perfect without any mistakes, and everybody will then accept me.
Mm-hmm.
But we've only considered one possible outcome.
Yeah.
Or on the flip side, we go, I'm going to be terrible at this. So, like, maybe yourself with singing, etc. Or whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be. Somebody goes, I won't be good at this thing. But
Mm-hmm.
we're only considering the one outcome. When we consider all of them, going, no, all of these are equal possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
We can improve our chances on other possibilities by practicing, learning, looking at other people, asking questions, all this kind of thing. But invariably, somewhere along the line on any path will be mistakes. So, for you to
Mm-hmm.
say, that's a great title, actually,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
put it, put that relatable analogy into it, saying, it's not just confined to the world of sport. It can
Mm-hmm.
be a metaphor for daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because we are imperfect people.
Yep. Yep.
We're gonna mess up. We're not gonna always get it right. And if we were perfect, what would be the use for God?
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
And so like you say, we just kind of help remind people you're gonna mess up. Brush it off and keep it moving. Get back
What's
up.
what's been your reception to that idea? When you open people to this idea of, we will make mistakes, what have people said to you in response, or what's been their feelings?
It's freeing them.
Okay, right,
Yeah,
okay.
because like you talk about that perfectionism, that was me. Just
Okay.
want to get it right, being so driven in everything, and it's
Mm.
like God just kind of breaks you. And that just reminded me of an idea with my daughter, the middle child. She was very strong-willed. She always has been. And
Mm.
one of the things I used to say with her, I'm trying to break her without breaking her spirit. And I just feel like that's pretty much the way God did it with my husband and me, because he was very arrogant and hard headed and all that stuff. Stubborn is putting it very mildly. But he's changed us a lot, and I think that's really important. Um, it's the resistance and the struggle. The way I see it, it makes us stronger.
Mm.
Right before things just completely fell apart with us, we ended up losing everything and all this different stuff. There was an African proverb that I had come across um, that said, "Smooth seas don't make good sailors." And I got that
Ah.
as my screenshot, and I had it on my laptop. It would just be going across it all the time, reminding me. And that's something I've often referred back to. Smooth seas don't make good sailors.
I think I just found my tagline for your show.
Okay.
It's very well put. It's a reminder that, again, these idealistic lifestyles that we look for, and look, we all want that sort of serenity as opposed to loads of chaos and happening
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Of course we do. But to think that we're always going to get away from that
Mm-hmm.
is not really true. We can learn to cope with these things better. So,
Mm-hmm.
in your analogy, to carry it on, if you do get a stormier sea, well, that just improves your abilities to navigate it through as a sailor,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But
Yeah.
I think it's often forgotten by thinking, right, again, in my work, I think, a lot of the time people hang their self-worth on one particular outcome.
Mm.
Right, I got to get that job, or I got to get that relationship, or I got to get that weight loss, or I got to get that thing. That's what will make me happy. That's
Mm-hmm.
what will make me
And it doesn't.
satisfied, fulfilled. And as you point out, it doesn't for some reason. Well, the reason I point out mainly is, did you ask yourself, why do you want that?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds obvious on the face of it, saying, well, I'll get more money, I can do what. That's the point. What do you want to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Because invariably you might get the goal and you're like, now what?
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
then you
you,
jump onto the next thing.
or you might get it and realize I didn't really want this.
Honestly, it's true.
Yeah.
People forget that in the whole. They just then jump from goal to goal
Mm-hmm.
and then go, right, what is it do I want? And you get stuck and unfulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
Or on the flip side, you don't end up getting it for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, right, I can't do it. I've got no willpower, I've got no motivation. I self-sabotage, which are all things that we chip away at our self-worth with. But when we come from the perspective of, we can ask ourselves, what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say a free pass just to forget everybody else and be selfish and all
Right.
this kind of thing. But if we truly want that true fulfillment for ourselves, which is a constant work in progress, we want to get an idea of what it looks like for us.
Mm-hmm.
Not because, oh, that looks what everybody else is doing, I'll just follow that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think, we could get stuck. So, and within that will come, stormier seas, because
Yeah.
that's going to involve real in-depth change that isn't going to happen overnight.
Right.
Our subconscious is going to go, what are you doing? And it's going to try and hold you back.
Yeah, work again.
And pull you back into the calmer seas.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, I need to go through a tough one before I get into, the calmer sea again.
Yeah, break on through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember you reminded me of something years ago when the baby child was memorizing a verse. It's where the Apostle Paul said, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. And she was just having such a hard time learning that. But I guess the irony of it was within it. You learn it. Contentment is not something we're born with. We learn contentment.
Yeah.
And I remember back in August 21, I had COVID. COVID almost took me out. And that same daughter I was just talking about, she's a nurse now. And she came through and saw me. She said, Mom, COVID almost took you out of here. But right after COVID, that was August 21, then 22. First quarter 22, we almost lost my granddaughter. She and her sister had both had COVID. She didn't overcome it as well because she's an asthmatic also. And she ended up in Children's Hospital for 13 days. She started having seizures and stuff. They had to put on dialysis. She coded a few different times. They had to resuscitate her. And I mean, she was in a real fight for her life. And one of the songs that got us through that whole ordeal with her was Such an Awesome God. Because, the song starts out that you caused the sun to rise and you laid it down to rest. Just reminding us of his power. And people were asking us during that time, when she was struggling, my daughter would get on, she had set up a Google page or Google Doc or whatever, where she was keeping everybody updated because so many people were praying for her all over the world.
Good idea. Yeah.
And so she was just giving people updates, and people were saying they just couldn't understand how she was still praising God and encouraging people to continue to trust in God.
Yeah.
When all of this was going on with her daughter. Vishal, within a year after all of that was going on, my granddaughter was on a tennis team, volleyball team, basketball team, and something else. It was like 4 different things. And one day we were at one of her volleyball games. And I saw her running across to the concession stand. And I told my daughter, my son-in-law, I said, it just hit me why I'm so happy to see that, because we didn't expect to ever see her do this again. I was excited when she hit her 12th birthday because nobody expected her to make it to her 12th birthday.
That's brilliant.
And then this past Sunday, now, I just told you earlier about this same daughter is dealing with her second preemie. This is her third daughter, but another preemie. And this past Sunday at church, worship leader had no idea that Such an Awesome God was our theme song. It was like our family anthem back when my other granddaughter was struggling. They did the song this past Sunday, and I had to go up and tell him after. Because he remembered when that granddaughter back in 22 was in the hospital, and I was headed out of the auditorium crying, trying to get to the hospital. and he had stopped me and prayed with me. He remembered that, we talked about it. And I said, now,
Right.
really something, y'all come right with this same song, and we're struggling with another grandbaby at the same time. But it just reminded us we serve such an awesome God.
There are some timely interventions going on
Oh,
here.
yeah. It's amazing. You know, one of the songs I remember was Carrie Joby's Healer. A healer. I believe you're my healer. I believe you're all I need. And during COVID, one of the most meaningful songs for me, she and her husband did The Blessing. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not, but it's a really good song. And there was a virtual choir that did a version of it also. But it just comes from the book of Numbers. God bless you and keep you. They just go through and did a song out of that particular verse. And it was really good. And the song, another song that's really meant a lot to us here in this past season, or this particular season, is I Speak Jesus. And I speak Jesus over my family. Just Jesus. And the last song I had on the list was Goodness of God. CC Winans did it. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
There speaks someone, I think, that's had so many moments through song. I was wondering, do you think in today's world and music landscape and space, that these kind of messages, not necessarily the same, religious or scriptures based songs or music, do you think there's a lot of that today that people could tap into in a source of reaching for hope or reaching for prolonging, or is it always going to go back to those days and times when it was that more evocative?
Vishad, I think that it's there. It's just a matter
Okay.
of people tapping into it and using it, because there's so much power there. There is so much power in music. And if you remember in the Bible, in the Old Testament, when it was talking about King Saul, King Saul was dealing with depression. And King David, who wasn't king at that time, but David would play his harp, and that music would help calm his soul. And that's what music does. It helps calm the soul. It's not to be getting us all. I know there's fight songs and all that kind of stuff, but that's not what music is meant. Well, yeah, fight songs, but as far as dividing people and stuff, that's not the purpose of music.
Do you think that that's been misappropriated today then, where it's more of a division or controversial based outlet?
And it's not meant for that.
Right.
It's meant to bring us together. One of the things I made a comment about probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when we had a lot of the racial division going on, and I was reminding our group that I was talking to that we would never get unity using division. Division is just going to create more division. If we want unity, we got to have unity to create more of it.
Really well said. You're right and that's, I think, on all sides. It's not down to one set of people, one outlet of people. We're all human beings at the end of the day. And look, this is not necessarily meant to be a throwback that we all love each other and this kind of thing. That's a separate expression, separate movement. But as you said, there's more to be said, I think, when you create that unity in music, etc., rather than, as you said, create those divisions. And I think the reason I asked that was there seems to be this drive towards the relative profitability that you can get out of music rather than the expression of it. So, which artists can flog the most. There's a whole debate going on especially our side about dynamic pricing for concerts. The fact that people can be on a queue with loads and loads of competition, finally get their chance to buy something, and then find the price has been jacked up out of nowhere, out of no warning, and suddenly it's a real adrenaline based fight or flight decision, saying I've got a chance to see this artist, whomever it might be, and they click buy, and then the reality then hits going, shit, I just spent X £100 or dollars on this thing, and you're like, where'd that come from? And you know, it just seems as if it's more the drive of like, rather than experiencing the event for what it is, it's a musical event, a place where, you know, you're all there for. When you're at a concert, it's very different to like a sports arena where half the arena will be against you because they're supporting the other team, and you're there to support the home team or whatever it might be. But in a music gig or concert, you're all there for the same reason, to watch this artist or band or whatever. And I think, you know, much of the drive today is about how much can we make this model ream money, whether it's in song sales, which is on dwindle because people can access stuff for free. Now it's like, right, let's hit concert goers, and that's how it's all done. And yeah, that's appreciative of all the struggles that artists have today in making money. But just come back to our idea before of like music being a unifier. I'm not so sure. I mean, I think there are pockets of it. So when there is an artist or a movement that does inspire loads of people coming together, it can happen. But of the music, like you're talking about songs that you probably heard, what, 40, 50 years ago? How many of the songs and music from today will we be still speaking about in
That's a good question.
Time?
You
know? Or it'll be still that music, which will now be then like 100 years old. That's what we'll still be referring back to.
Because they're timeless.
Exactly. Exactly. I was just like, you know, are we suddenly at a space where music isn't timeless?
And we don't want to lose. We don't want that to happen because we don't want to lose that. You know.
Very true. Very true. As I said, there's pockets of it, but I'm not so sure there's a huge drive towards it.
Not as a whole.
Indeed.
Yep, you got a point there.
Yes. Well, I always say on this show, like, there's so much fun and enjoyment in these conversations, and the time goes so quickly. You know, we're nearly up on the hour already. So, Allison, before you go, I just wonder if there's any last thoughts you want to share with people, perhaps where they can find you in terms of your services, or just any general lasting thoughts you'd like to share.
The main one goes right back to what we said from the beginning when you were doing your intro and you were talking about how your podcast, you're telling stories. And that's what it's all about, because people need to hear our stories. Revelation 12:11 is the foundational verse for my editing and publishing. You know, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. We overcome by telling our stories. And not only do we overcome, they help other people overcome as well. And that's what I do. You know, and my business is Published with Allison. Can be found at publishedwithallison.com. And I definitely encourage anybody, you know, write your story. And I'm always telling them, whether you publish with Allison or somebody else, just get your story told. You know, because these stories are for a purpose. You know, there's purpose in our pain.
And I guess, do you come from the perspective of, you're not here to write the New York Times bestseller or anything like that? Hey, look, if it happens, it happens. But this is more as a way to kind of leave your mark, or, you know, and then people go, well, who's going to read it? Well, you never know.
We don't. And we don't know. Just like you talk about, those songs have just been hitting at just the right time in my life. You never know who might pick your book up and read your story and what an impact it might have on them. Yeah, absolutely. We can't keep taking them to the grave with us. Too many people have taken their stories to the grave, and we can't let that keep happening.
No, well said. Well said. Well, look, guys, I hope you're watching and listening, and take up Allison on her offer to publish your book, because as I said, you've all got stories, and as I say, we're not here to make a fortune from it. We're not here to change the whole world. But look, if someone read it and went, you know what, that was a nice read. That's all it can, you've helped that one person, or, you gave them the enjoyment, So as Allison says, I would encourage you to get your story out there. As I said, we've all got it, however mundane we feel our, life or existence is, you've got something to say, and someone will pick up something from it, I'm sure. So feel free to check out Allison's services, and we'll publish the links below on the description. But Allison, thank you so much for being on the show. Really thankful for you sharing all that you did. I know there's some personal moments and those very storied backgrounds, so thank you for that.
Yes.
And for everybody watching and listening, thank you for taking a part in this show as well. Let us know below what you think of the conversation, any questions, any thoughts, etc. And we'll be happy to discuss that. And if you want to be on the show, just check out the link in the description, or wherever you're watching this, to join me on the show as well. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff that helps that all-conquering algorithm thing would be appreciated. But until the next show, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and share this episode around. Subscribe to the channel for further shows coming up. Comment with your thoughts below, and use the sign up link to get yourself on the show as well. I'd love to have you on. Feel supersonic.